Yeah. Ok. Hã?
Começa já a primeira.
É este já.
Okay.
É já este.
You want
Portanto,
to?
é livre. Veja o programa, vai aparecendo quando quiser. Eu sei que está ocupado.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, bon dia, and it's so great to be back here in Lisbon, in beautiful Portugal. As we're getting set up, in the spirit of knowledge sharing, since people have come from 21 countries, maybe it would be nice to introduce yourself for maybe a minute or two to the person to your left, to the right, and behind you and in front of you. So if you just take a minute or two and introduce yourselves, and maybe you'll meet some new friends, and then we'll get started. Okay. And this will be, okay. Great, thank you. Well, hopefully you had a chance to maybe meet some new acquaintances, and I want to thank all the organizing societies and all the wonderful people here who have made this conference special. And for me, it's sad in a way. I've been teaching for about 43 years for full-time teaching, and about 35 years in knowledge management. And this is probably going to be my last lecture in knowledge management before I officially retire. So, so it is a little melancholic and nostalgic as well. Well, for those from the US, today is Thanksgiving Day, and I thought I would do something special because back in the US, it's a big family holiday. So I wanted you to meet my own family because you, as part of the KM community, you're also part of my family. So we're going to do a little intermixing that way. So before I get started, I wanted to introduce my wife, Janet, and who is my partner in crime, and you'll meet the other family members shortly. So by the way, our birthday was last week. We have the same birthday, so we're very much alike. Okay. Let's see if this works. Or do I point to the... If, okay, you might have to work the slides. Wonderful. So to get started, and I have to be mindful of the time, so Florinda, keep me honest, all right? Um, I know I'm supposed to finish by 9:45. So I've been lucky to have a number of connections to Lisbon and Portugal over the years, and I've been a close admirer of all the good things you're doing here. Even going back to 1994, I organized and chaired the Second World Congress on Expert Systems, which was in Estoril. And we had about 600 attendees from 40 to 50 countries and really had a marvelous time here. More recently, so maybe the next slide, uh, about 2 years ago, Janet and I visited Lisbon and Ishti in January, and you probably recognize Florinda and I think Alvaro. I'm not sure, is Alvaro here? Um, Had a chance to meet him and one of the visiting colleagues from Brazil. And then later that year, we returned to Lisbon with the full family. So since Suleiman just came from the soccer match yesterday, the football match, our 4-year-old grandson on the left wearing the Portugal, I guess, national soccer or football outfit. Big fan of Ronaldo. I know he's playing in Saudi Arabia now, but I hear he's still as well liked here. Um, and then uh, Zev is our 6-year-old grandson. Let's see if this works. Uh, and then the rest of the family, Jason is actually a physician. He's a professor at Columbia University Medical Center. His wife, Anat, is a physician at Rutgers University in New Jersey. Our son, Kenny, is a lawyer in New York City. And Janet is also a lawyer and a professor at New York University, University of Pennsylvania. So what I'm getting at is they all have the real intelligence. I have the artificial intelligence, okay? So any of the tough questions, Janet can answer. All right. Uh, just to finish up, that's a quick intro, maybe the next slide. We've been living this past semester in New York City, and we think of Portugal often. And so what I try to do is have a collection of photos from the past 6 months. And here, of course, you see the rooster who is, symbolizing good luck and justice and faith in the national identity. And this was at one of the restaurants there. And then at another restaurant in New York City, they had pastel de nata. So believe me, not as good as the original ones in Belém. But anyway, there's certainly a very strong community in New York, from Portugal. Okay, next slide. All right. So uh, now that you know my family and some of our connections with Lisbon and Portugal, I just want to highlight a few things that I've learned about knowledge management over my many years. And if you're wondering, that is me in grade school. I used to be much better looking, I think. But anyway, let me highlight some of the lessons learned. And then afterwards, I want to talk about the future of knowledge management. So hopefully we'll get through everything on time. So the next slide, please. So to set the stage, I try to put the knowledge management books that I've been involved with, either as an author or an editor, in chronological order, starting with the KM and its integrative elements, which was published, I think, back in 1997. And then in red here was actually the first handbook on knowledge management in 1999. And then more recently, I think in 2021, taking a look at what are some of the research directions for knowledge management and analytics. So if we go to the next slide. All right, so a few lessons learned. As we all know, Sir Francis Bacon coined the expression, knowledge is power. And this was actually at a high school that I passed in New York City. on the Upper East Side. And we all know that really sharing knowledge, right, is power. And in order to do that, you have to build the interpersonal respect and trust. So there was an interesting article back in July in the analytics publication, and the title of the article was Why Managers Hoard Knowledge and How AI Can Help Stop It. And the reluctance really isn't about being, selfish. It's really what people are calling psychological ownership. So in other words, what managers view internally developed knowledge as a reflection of their identity or effort or professional value, the act of sharing can feel less like collaboration and more like surrender. So, so there might be some reluctance, on some parts, to be able to share knowledge with others, but maybe a number of things could be done very easily. So first, you want to reward curiosity and not just output. So maybe you update your AI dashboards to track the usage of internal knowledge repositories, and you publicly highlight, the top seekers and adapters of ideas. Maybe you prompt for tacit reflections. So you might ask, what was the hardest decision here? Or what would you do differently the next time, and get that reflective thinking. You apply social metadata so you can tag documents not by content, but also by outcome and social use. So, was this reused and by whom? Did it spark a pivot? And even use AI to surface silent nodes. So again, this might break some of the knowledge hoarding barriers that, might exist. The next slide. Oh, perfect. So another important lesson learned is to find time to pause and reflect. And Florinda had mentioned I spent some time as the first knowledge management officer in NASA Goddard Space Flight Center outside of Washington, D.C. And we established creative learning groups with master coaches to help employees to be reflective and collaborative and creative. And so it's good to establish the camaraderie and collegiality even outside the workplace. So now at NASA, they have a methodology called POW, for pause and learn. And it really looks at, the issue of pausing, reflecting, and then learning from those experiences. Collaboration and mentoring are also key, as shown as team building and listening to stories from the older generations to the new ones. Here depicted by Grandma Janet, speaking with the two generations, or one of our sons and then the grandkids. But as you know, there's also reverse mentoring, right? We can learn a lot from the younger generation, especially with our grandsons. Half the time I don't know how to work the gadgets, but they seem to know how to do that. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, perfect. We've also learned in our KM community to not juggle too many balls and do everything at once. And so you want to pick one or two KM applications that are greatly needed, and then show quick value to the organization. And then this will help build confidence in using KM and will reduce the KM skeptics. So even when I was at NASA, the engineers and the technologists were used to working in project teams, and they were very keen on collaborating. So we worked with them first to introduce some of the KM initiatives, and then the scientists, who were a little more reluctant at first because they had the philosophy, who's going to be noted as the first author, on a paper. So even though scientists work in teams, there was a little bit of that, competitive and knowledge hoarding. But what was useful was that we could show value from working with the engineers and the project managers and the technologists, and then they eventually accepted what KM could offer. Okay, don't be narrow-minded. So we had a chance to visit Montreal, and of course, the adage, if the only tool you know is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail. And And of course, you have to, be much more wide viewed and not be so myopic. And actually now through the use of Gen AI systems, there was an article, the top 100 uses of Gen AI, number one was for brainstorming. So there's some great tools that can help you think out of the box. Anyone know what the number two reason why people use Gen AI systems like ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot? What was that? A little laziness. That was one of them, but someone else had an idea? Spelling correction. Well, it was actually for companionship. And and so, of course, I guess in November 2022, right, ChatGPT came available to the public, and we were still during COVID. So, but companionship was cited as a second key reason for using Gen AI systems, which is interesting. Oh, I'm going too slow or you're going too fast. If we could just back up one. Um, okay, in the next slide. Okay, great. Uh, I wonder if you have the most up-to-date slide deck. Uh, all right. So we also have learned that it's the grassroots approach to KM may be a good way that organizations have started with knowledge management, but really for it to take hold strategically, you have to have the senior leaders invested both in their involvement in the financial and moral commitment. If we go to the next slide. And KM doesn't have to be perfect. So you may not need a particular masterpiece to gain value and support. In fact, it could lead to perfection paralysis, which stalls progress and makes it harder to gain stakeholder buy-in. So an iterative agile approach might be a very effective way for demonstrating value and building momentum. You also want to think outside the box. And if you fail, fail fast and learn from your experiences. And we've had what we call urban legends in the past. One of my prior universities, we had one such individual. When you try to do a new idea and implement it, they would say, well, we've always done it this way in the past and it works, so we'll just keep it that way. Well, maybe there are better ways of doing things. So again, you'd want to involve them in the process and make them feel they're a part of that change management. Last year, we also had a chance to visit the Dr. Seuss Museum. Dr. Seuss wrote Cat in the Hat. Wasn't a real doctor. But anyway, this was in Springfield, Massachusetts, not too far from Boston. And at an adjacent museum, they had a funny animal exhibit. And this was one of the photographs they took. And so the question is, is the chipmunk singing for joy or strangling? And for KM, we want to make sure that we don't stifle innovation, right? And be creative and innovative. Okay, so we're in the age of AI. Coming up, we'll be in the era of quantum computing. That's, I think, coming down the pike. And it's amazing what's happening today. So Albania, I think, is one of the first countries to appoint an AI minister. And this individual is tasked to oversee all public procurement. I also was walking in New York City last week, and at Times Square, the main heart of New York City, there was a huge billboard, and it said, "Stop hiring humans. The era of AI workers is already here." And there are many companies now, although some are retreating, who have gone kind of the AI agents approach. And but I don't think I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that billboard, but it's interesting to see. Okay, and we also want to make sure, and we learned from the KM research, that intrinsic motivators are more important than the extrinsic motivators, right? So we want to make sure you recognize, not simply reward, but recognize people for doing so. One or two more lessons, then I'll get to kind of where we're heading. So if we go to the next slide, you don't want to be alone. Last year, our kids went to Copenhagen. Here's the famous mermaid. And again, KM is a wonderful mechanism for integrating across the silos. And then try to hit the sweet spot. So I had a chance to visit Hershey Park, which is known for their chocolate, and here are our grandkids. And so you want to make sure that the applications are causing pain for the organization, and then see how KM can address that need. All right, build it, and they will come. Well, we know that's not quite true. So you have to have the right change agents and the change management processes in place to ensure the usage of your KM system, and make sure you have some fun. So this is Kenny, and we think his bride-to-be, Brittany. So now you know the entire family. Didn't show you the dog, but unfortunately he passed away a few years ago. But so, gamification, knowledge cafes, and collaborative spaces can make KM enjoyable to do. All right. And finally, on the lessons learned, we have a saying in our family that it's never too cold for ice cream. So when I saw this sign in an ice cream shop in Brooklyn, New York, I thought about the importance of spreading the word and celebrating the KM successes first, and discussing the bittersweet situations to learn from the future. Okay, so I've kind of highlighted some of the lessons learned that I acquired over the many years relating to KM. And you also have now met my own family. And so I'd like to kind of address the question about the future of knowledge management. And the key question is KM alive, or is it already dead? And we already continue to have wonderful conferences like this, as well as last week in Washington was the KM World Conference. You have the Conference on Information Knowledge Management. You have the Knowledge Management Summit in Dublin, and many others. And so for fun, I asked one of the knowledgeable sources to see what she thought as to whether KM was alive or dead. And that knowledgeable source was ChatGPT. So just for fun, I wanted to see what she had to say. So the answer was no, knowledge management isn't dead. It has shape-shifted so much that people don't recognize it anymore. So what are some of the key points here? So kind of the old KM playbook has faded. So in the 1990s and the 2000s, KM meant centralized repositories, document taxonomies, and intranet, and you capture everything. So as we know, it was too static. The content went stale. They relied heavily on manual input from busy employees, and it focused more on the collections of knowledge, not the flows of knowledge. Additionally, the new KM is embedded, it's not standalone. So today, KM lives in digital workflows and collaboration tools and AI-driven search. And you don't go to a KM system anymore, right? The system comes to you in the moment of need. So whether it's Slack integrations or AI co-pilots or enterprise search, again, you're able to get the content relevant documents constantly. And AI has shifted the center of gravity. So through the use of generative, AI and large and small language models, we've made it much easier to kind of synthesize the tacit and explicit knowledge. Additionally, tacit knowledge still needs humans. And so even the smartest AI can't fully replace human mentoring or storytelling and communities of practice. So the people side of KM, the culture, the incentives, the networks is still very essential. And so the term might be declining a bit, but the mission really isn't. So many organizations, call it knowledge enablement, or maybe digital workspace, or intelligent information management, or enterprise search and insights. But it's the same goal. How do you make the right knowledge available to the right people at the right time? And so to sum up, KM really isn't dead. It's hiding inside your AI tools, your collaborative platforms, and your organization's cultures. So I wanted to dig into this a little more, and I'll be mindful of the time. So I wanted to look at CKOs, Chief Knowledge Officer. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to see, are organizations hiring CKOs? And it turns out that CKO jobs still exist, but if you check LinkedIn or some of the other HR talent sources, the CKO jobs are fairly rare, and they're targeted in certain industries. So in the U.S., many of the law firms do have still chief knowledge officers and knowledge managers, and that's pretty prevalent among the law firms. But I think the actual CKO designation has really morphed into other titles. And some of these are, maybe Chief Digital Officer, the Chief AI Officer, the Chief AI Ethics Officer, the Digital Ethicist, and others. So, but even with that, Stan Garfield, who was the keynote speaker at last year's ICKM conference at Kent State, he has a very active senior knowledge management community. Some of you are part of that community. There are over 1,300 members of KM practitioners with monthly calls. So even though maybe the CKO job isn't specifically designated as such, there are people doing very similar roles. Okay, let's look at the education side. So if you look at employment for KM-related graduates in associated KM academic programs, unfortunately, there are only a handful of academic KM programs left. And so that's sad, but again, it's kind of morphed into other areas. But according to APQC, which does a lot of KM benchmarking, as you probably are aware, they had this Priority and Trends 2025 report. And even though there's probably a little bit of bias, they found that the current state of knowledge management is either gaining ground or at least steady. However, I just received last week the November-December 2025 KM World Magazine, and they had a survey, APQC had a more recent survey, and they found that 62% of the mid-career KM professionals surveyed, so those with 3 to 5 years of experience, said they were uncertain about their future or didn't see a future career path for KM. So according to the same report, these were the most important technologies for KM for this past year, and the ones you would expect, the Gen AI to create new artifacts and content, and AI to recommend content or knowledge assets, and team collaboration, AI-driven search, and certainly knowledge graphs. So in terms of top opportunities for KM to capitalize on, AI-powered KM solutions can help scale and deliver value to organizations. And there have been many examples of this. So there was a global management consulting firm with about 5,000 consultants across multiple practice areas. And they found that their consultants waste time about 3 to 4 hours a week just searching for internal reports and slide decks and client insights that are scattered across SharePoint and email and Teams. And so they deployed an AI-powered knowledge assistant, and it was integrated with Microsoft 365 and Slack. They used RAG, the retrieval augmented generation, to index and summarize internal content, and it was extremely valuable to them. So KM can still be very helpful in capturing and sharing critical knowledge before employees leave or get fired or move on to different tasks. And here in the US, our government, we've been downsizing quite a bit. And so I wonder about all the critical knowledge that we're losing with people moving on either willingly or not. So just to conclude, my own thought is that KM is still very much alive, but it's disguised in different ways. So either through person-centered AI efforts or through some of my own research on what I call intuition-based decision-making, or through other means. And perhaps it will have a stronger comeback, similar to AI. I started in AI in the early 80s and was never as popular as it is now. And so it took 70 years for it to really, develop. And I think KM has also some really interesting potentials in the years ahead. So I just want to reference one quote and then maybe mention a call to action. I know I'm getting close to the time. The CEO at LinkedIn, who's Ryan Roslansky, he said recently that AI literacy is should certainly be taught to the students for future success, but he said that there are four qualities that can't easily be replaced. And he talks about empathy, adaptability, communication, and just being able to actually have a conversation with someone. And so he said, don't forget the human skills. Those are critical to being successful in anything that you're trying to do move forward. So certainly KM has a role in all of this. So my call to action for us as a KM community is really threefold. One, emphasize the human-centered AI movement, where KM can be a foundational discipline of decision-making. I often felt instead of saying AI, we should have said IA, said artificial intelligence, intelligence amplification. So the human-centered AI approach, I think, is the way to go. The second, as professors, further educate your students, and as practitioners, your colleagues, on the merits of KM. It's been shown through research, stimulates innovation, creativity, organizational intelligence, continuous improvement, just wonderful benefits. And then my mantra is that analytics plus intuition equals success. So experiential learning, whether through successes or failures, is a key part of developing an intuitive awareness as an executive. And KM is an integral part of that equation. So I've enjoyed being a part of the KM family, and now you have also been introduced to my other family. I'll still be involved, albeit maybe in a semi-retired mode, and still try to be active in the field. We do have a book coming out in November called Leveraging AI for Business Innovation, and Raquel also has a new book out. And then we have a book coming out in April by Taylor and Francis, and many of you have contributed chapters, so we appreciate that, on ethical AI and data science. So I just want to say obrigado, and on this Thanksgiving Day, I want to thank you, almost going to cry, and my family for allowing me to be part of the KM community, and we look forward to a great conference. And I apologize for my voice. We were a little bit under the weather. So anyway, hopefully I was clear. Thank you so much. And, I, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments or.
Special question for a special keynote. After you will have time to put many questions to the coffee break, the lunch, etc. But now, if you have a question, we ask them. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jeff. Yeah.
Which is why we work in expertise. So what's changed from the early 90s when we were working on this stuff to now? Because expertise were AI at the time. Now we're working on AI. And at the end of this, we're saying we don't want to lose knowledge. How have we failed the last 30 years to figure out how not to lose knowledge?
So in terms of the technology advancements, as you know, and Jeff has done great work in the field. Actually, I taught a course on developing the intuitive executive. So I used Jeff's book, which was wonderful. So I think the key difference is that over the past 10 years, we've just made some great advances in machine learning, and now with the Gen AI work with LLMs and SLMs and specialized domain models, even though they're not 100% correct, as we know, it's just so much easier to be able to query the systems to really get at the information that you want in a very timely basis. So I think the real issue and why we've advanced is just, in terms of developing improved machine learning techniques. Although I've heard a number of speakers, I was at a talk, Vasant Dar just wrote a book on our birthday, November 18th. It came out called Thinking Machines with AI. And the big push now, of course, is agentic AI. But the question is, how much agency do we give in these agents? And you get into a little more on the philosophical, the ethical considerations. So, so I think we still have, we're still capturing knowledge, but now through AI-powered, solutions, it's just so much easier than with expert systems. They were very static. They would, once you got outside your domain, they would degrade very, very quickly. They just didn't have the learning and adaptability capabilities. And I think that's where the advancements in machine learning will continue to grow. But there are folks. I just read a book called "If You Build It, People Will Die," and it was from two scientists from the Machine Intelligence Research Institute. It came out a couple months ago, and they think there could be an AI apocalypse. So, stay tuned. We'll see what happens. But thanks, Jeff, for the question. Yeah.
For Jai, this is part of our Portuguese millennial knowledge. This is the past, this is the future of knowledge for you.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I have